you all know me. Yeah? So I'm Maryna Tsehelska, I'm from Pedagogical University, and I own a language center. Today we will be talking about teaching environmental protection, keywords, next slide please, and how to do it. We'll go a different way. So firstly, we will review quickly the techniques that we have already talked about, and then we will reflect on how you personally teach environmental protection, and then we'll take the so-called big and difficult map and we'll start analyzing it. I mean, we won't start with the easy maps. We'll have a difficult map at once, and finally, if we have time, we'll decide how we can use thinking skills on talking about this topic. So my first question is, how many of you do teach environmental protection, or maybe have taught? Okay, just 2, 3, not so many, 4, good.
I mentioned that in the mine school, there is our
Exactly.
And this topic is very important for me.
Yeah, it is very important, and somehow it is very difficult to teach. Yeah? What I have noticed that it's very, very difficult to comprehend, especially for the students of the 9th grade. Yeah? So, quick revision. Next slide, please. We'll start with a quick revision. That's from the previous webinar, or seminars, sorry. Yeah? The 4 phases of learning. Why do we need to put everything into maps? They are. Phase number 1, to impress. Impression, to memorize the information. Memorization, for the brain to authorize. Authorization, and to start using the material. Initiation. And initiation. That means, next slide please. That means that the scheme, I taught Stripe how to whistle. I don't hear him whistling. Yeah? I said I taught him. I don't say he learned it. Yeah? That's why it happens all over the time, everywhere. Yeah? We teach, we really don't authorize, and finally the students have no initiation of the knowledge, they do not really use it. So, next slide please. Again, impressing. We chunk the topics into teachable and learnable elements. Memorization. If we want a complete picture, we do not teach everything at once. Finally, some details will be irrelevant for the brain, and the students will learn it. You have no questions here. So, this is maybe the 5th time I'm talking about it. Next slide, please. So, what are the chunks of the topic? How do we chunk a topic? What are your ideas about the chunks?
So, environment or just
any kind of a topic. So chunks are important. Next slide, please. Chunks are important, and remember last time I talked about a possible scheme of a topic. So any topic will, for example, if we have, let's put anything here. Any word. Yes, any kind of a word. Yeah. So from environmental protection, any kind of a flood, for example. Yeah, a flood or deforestation. Yeah. So if deforestation is here, it will have its group. What will be the group for deforestation?
Environmental problems.
Let it be environmental problems. What will be the characteristics for deforestation?
Reason.
Where, so these are not the reasons yet, but they will be maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah? But where it happens, how often it happens,
Right.
and so on. Parts of deforestation.
Um,
How many trees we cut first, and then we'll go to the effect of deforestation on humans and how the humans affect deforestation. So, like, it looks difficult, but really you can put anything here and it will be the same scheme of talking for every topic. So how can we chunk it by levels? What will we teach first? Next slide. So at first we will probably at the elementary level we will teach the main vocabulary, we will teach the group it belongs to and its qualitative characteristics. This is, I'm not talking about deforestation, I am talking about, for example, natural disasters. So at the elementary level we will teach natural disasters. Here there will be flooding, and we can say that where it can happen and what are the elements of it. The water rises, then goes down. So that is the easy start, and we can put here any kind of vocabulary, especially connected with environment. Okay, next. So then later, we will, at the intermediate level, we will shift the focus to a human. And we will say why this happens. So we can talk about natural disasters, and we can talk about human lifestyle, habits, needs, society, why all this happens to us. Why we, for example, do what we do to the environment. Okay, and finally, we can go to climate and history, because they add a very necessary flavor to any kind of a topic. I mean, they give the cause and effect. Last time we talked why it is so difficult to add climate and history into our teaching. Why?
lack of some
Because
specific knowledge.
because so many teachers lack knowledge about it, and as a result do not want to teach it. Next slide. So, but those topics, they bring the element of cause and effect. And for example, like, I love those two topics because any other topic may be really rich with history and geography. So, next slide. And one more important moment when we teach a topic, it is in your handouts as well, we need to develop language awareness. What is language awareness?
Mechanics.
Mechanics. It's what we need to know about the English language, and that is what we need to practice all the time. So what do we need to practice about English? Like, this is my own point of view, but I believe that you have the same idea about it. What is important to know? The 3 verb forms. Yeah? So they are really important when we start learning irregular verbs, and we keep learning and keep learning them. What else do we start understanding while we learn them? We come to the understanding that this 3 or participle 2 is much like an adjective. Yeah? So, and if illustrating means a person who acts or something which acts, illustrated will mean something which is acted upon. Also, adjectives may derive from the same verb only with the help of other suffixes, so-called adjective suffixes. Yeah. So these two forms, they are like adjectives. We can call them adjectives, but actually we understand that they are participles. What else should we know about English word building? If we add er, or in this case or, we will get a person who acts or a tool. Yeah? So, illustrator and illustrator as a tool. So then we can work with adjectives that define those nouns. A quick illustrator illustrates quickly, and we come to the adverbs. Also, we can have the knowledge of specific noun suffixes like illustrativity or illustration. And here we can also compare these words to their gerundial forms, to gerunds. Illustrating meaning doing what? This is the whole knowledge that the students have to constantly recycle when they learn English, because it brings language awareness. Meaning they can easily paraphrase, change, yeah? So redesign the phrases they use. What do we do for this? I mean, what is the primarily moment that I do when I design the maps? I underline the root verb. And from the root verb, I believe that the students can be able to paraphrase. Questions here? No? Okay. So my questions to you. This first scheme is how we built a topic. Yeah? Is a mind map on how to build a topic. What do we need to know how to build a topic? We need to know the parts of it, which group it belongs to, yeah, and how it is affected by culture and by history and by geography. Okay, what is this?
Scheme that person used after learning English as a result of learning of English language of another foreign languages.
Perfect. So this is what makes English English. This is what makes English so specific. Direct word order, very diverse word formation, and if you teach this word formation from early stages, you teach your students not one word, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10.
Specific
Yeah?
elements what English language different from another.
Good. From Russian, from Ukrainian, from the languages that we use.
And
Yeah?
for example, different kinds of groups. As you know, Ukrainian language is flexible,
Very good.
but English language is analytical.
Analytical.
And in Ukrainian we flex for basic of sentences, but in English we have schemes and shabloons.
Thank you. Because of the word order, yeah, and because of the suffixes, we can change the meaning of the phrase. Very good point. Thank you. Yeah. So, okay, that's it. This is the theory that we need to know before we start developing a topic. Yeah. Now, the topic itself. Next slide, please. And it's not disregard food here. Here is environment. So, in your handouts, you have the questions from IELTS and the vocabulary that is given to the students who are going or who are preparing to the exam. Let's quickly examine them. Yeah? So, are there any environmental problems in your country? And we have the words like pollution levels, exhaust fumes, heavy industry, air quality. Huh? Do you take interest in nature? And again, get back to nature, the natural world, natural habitat. Do you or your family take steps to help the environment? Impact on the environment, energy conservation, environmentally friendly. Who of you knows about this kind of preparation and uses these kinds of sites and materials? Okay, I know that Elena Gennadievna does. So, how many other questions do we have? There will be
Whose
part 2.
responsibility,
Yeah, okay. Next slide, please. In the questions, in the part 2 style tasks, there will be the environmental problem that has been in the news, and you should say when, where the event happened. Actually, this is about the event, as I told you, what actually took place and how you felt about this problem. This is what the person feels about the problem. And again, we have lots and lots of vocabulary. And next, part 3 style questions. What do you think is the main danger the world faces in terms of the environment? What examples are there of how we damage the natural world? And in which ways do we respond well to environmental problems? Yeah? Okay, and finally, next slide, we have the vocabulary. Now imagine I give you just 2 minutes to discuss how we can teach it. Like, this is the side to help the teachers and the learners, and maybe you have ideas how we can teach this kind of vocabulary and this kind of topic using the tasks and the vocabulary. Elena Gennadievna, you are my. How would you teach it?
Okay, I think it's reasonable first to list the problems and group the vocabulary around each problem, and then like discussing in different ways. Just they need to see that list, and then probably everything will depend on the vocabulary you give them.
Okay, so this is like number 1. We'll list the problems, we group the vocabulary around the problems and discuss it until they start understanding it. Good.
I propose for students or pupils to play a game with such definitions.
Okay, I can imagine myself playing a game with the definitions. I would be helpless. Like, I would be helpless with floods that happen. It's okay, but the decline in areas of land where animals and plants would normally exist. Like, personally, I would be helpless. I don't know. It looks like a good task, yeah? But the vocabulary is very difficult.
So this is the IELTS level. This is not.
Yeah, but we imagine that
Yes.
these are B2 plus students. Yeah, B2 plus. So they probably have some background knowledge. But if they are the 9th graders and they still have the same vocabulary, nearly the same,
No, it has to be simpler.
not that much. I was present at in the class where this vocabulary was taught. Very difficult for the kids to comprehend. Very difficult. I understand, but we somehow we can make it easier. How can we make it easier?
Sorry.
Oh, come on.
I would make something with visualization. I would add some visual, I don't know,
Like a
some pictures.
PowerPoint with the pictures.
Or just, printed ones on the blackboard.
Very good. Very good. So visualization, then clusters.
Ask to home to prepare materials from biology, from ecological, that persons can be introduced this in his or her native languages.
Very good. So I would also translate it into a native language. That would be like my step number 1. To check their understanding and what they really know about the topic. Yeah? But if we think about categorizing the topic, remember we said that putting everything into the categories is a natural wish of a human brain. How can this vocabulary, how can these words be categorized? Into what?
Teacher, that in this picture is
Very good. So we take this picture as
As the model.
and we probably can think about some categories. But what are the categories that we can think of?
Like descriptive things that can describe this
Okay,
natural
like
disaster or whatever it is, or a
fast,
problem. Yeah.
quick, sudden, and so on. We can give descriptive words. What else?
The reasons and like cause and effect. Why
Very
it
good.
happens
I
and-
would
and
like
what it brings.
to start with cause and effect, of course, and then there will be two big groups. What are the groups that we can think of?
Caused by human and caused by something.
Why not? But they all are caused
but
by
it's a
human.
problem that discussed in towns level. Громади ми зараз почалися це
Окей.
цей напрямок, тобто там іде обговорення і можна відправити, поспостерігати цю практику, да, і от
Кого відправити? Ninth graders?
Okay.
No. It's a good idea, but we need to teach them the vocabulary. If we send them to Gramada, we won't teach them the vocabulary. So, okay, that is why we'll start now with the map itself. And we'll spend, I hope, the bigger part of our time at discussing the map itself. Next slide, please. And I'm giving you the maps. I didn't want you to start looking at them before. That's why I'm giving them right now.
We need to make a list. Там где-то есть еще.
No. Okay. So, this is the map. We'll start with this map. It is basically called harming the environment. So, what do we remember when we work at this map? We remember that I was making it by using this topic scheme. So, it will have the cause and the effect, and it will describe the problem. Okay?
And give possible solutions.
Yeah. So, and yeah, we will also talk about the solution. But what do we remember? What else do we remember? We also remember that it promotes language awareness. How does it promote language awareness? Here, it is the upper level already by the roots. By the roots. Okay? And that is what we will practice right now. So right now we will imagine how we can work with this kind of a map. Okay, so you are my students, or I am your student, and we have this topic. You were thinking about how to group the vocabulary, and you developed this map. First step, what will you do first? Your students get the map. Where to go first?
Probably the background.
The background, okay, or I would suggest to look at the categories. Yeah? What are the categories? So first remember, the first stage is impression. We get the whole impression of the topic. After you ask them, imagine, you can ask them the questions I asked you. And the answers will be very vague. I mean, they will tell you something about the environmental protection, but they won't categorize it the way you want them to categorize. Yeah? So, I suggest the scheme like this. The human activity resulted in harming the environment. So, the environment harm had its effect and we can imagine that it had effect on the humans, but it may be solved with the following measures. So basically we have 4 main categories. Why? What happened? The result, and the solution. That's what I told you. Cause and effect is, for me, step number 2 in learning a topic. As much as our brain loves categorizing, it loves cause and effect. So how can we work with this map then? We categorize. What can we do?
Okay, take each environmental problem
Very good.
and go over.
Very good. So we can go either this way, yeah? And that is how we will have the group, and we will talk about the group and its parts. Or we can go this way, and that is how we will trace the cause and the effect. Yeah? So usually it is much easier to start working in categories, of course, because within the category there can be what? Cause and effect itself. So I told you that history always is an answer. And here, talking about environmental problems, we can talk about 2 cycles in human activity. They are before the 1900s, meaning before the Industrial Revolution, and after the 1900s, meaning after the Industrial Revolution. What do we do here? Here again, we divide into the categories. What was going on before the Industrial Revolution? Individual production, workshops and households produced goods to sell or exchange at the market. So, food was produced in sustainable closed farming cycle, which meant food was produced for sale, manure and waste were used as natural fertilizers. Natural fertilizers fertilized fields with crop rotation. Crops were used for food, and food was used for sale, and that is how we learn the word sustainable, which is a very fashionable word now, yeah? To sustain, sustainable, and that is how they understand how sustainable farming or eco-farming works. So, that is why here, or another course was the transportation was based on renewable energy, horses, carts, ships, and so on. Population grew slowly because of what? Because food was produced in very little quantities, and food was produced in sustainable farming cycle. So population grew slowly, and limited use of natural resources, paraphrase, and people used the resources limitedly. Yeah. Or there was a limit in using natural resources.
Because of technology.
Yeah. Because, again, because goods were produced and sold at the markets, and that is why the production was very scarce, not so many things were produced, people had no food to eat, and so on and so forth. How will you work with this part? How will you work with this part? Probably you would do all kinds of periphrasings. Yeah? Probably you will pay your students' attention, or you will draw your students' attention to the underlying truths, and you will try to paraphrase, maybe together with them, and to retell the same using different words. Let's start. Oh, we'll start comparison when we go here. Yeah? What will we do here? So, before the Industrial Revolution, goods were produced individually.
Mass production.
Yeah? So, individually and sold or exchanged. So when you work with this part, you don't ask your students to retell the same. You ask them to paraphrase. You ask them to paraphrase, and how do they know how to paraphrase? Because they had already practiced this way of language awareness. Because we were practicing and practicing all this before. Yeah? So, okay, here. Give me something with this.
People used
Okay.
renewable energy.
No.
Renewable energy for different purposes. Only
Or
renewable.
goods were transported with the energy that was renewed,
Or renewed. Okay.
or which they could renew. Here. So population grew slowly. You don't ask them to repeat the same. You ask them to paraphrase. So population grew slowly and
Natural resources
were used limitedly, or there were limits in using natural resources, or natural resources were not used much. As you wish. Depends upon how much time you want to spend on this. Good. So then we see the Industrial Revolution, and what happened? Individual production changed
started to
okay,
be
changed
produced
into
mass.
Yes, goods started to be produced massively. Massively. So, food is produced massively in large-scale farming with specialization. I should have underlined it here. Specialize, and we can say that large-scale farms specialize, yeah? Or there are large-scale farms that specialize in food production, in food production, okay? Or in monocropping. If we had here sustainable closed farming cycle, now we have an open farming cycle. Yeah? So what does an open farming cycle mean? It means that chemical fertilizers are used to what?
To
To fertilize the land, not as before when we used natural fertilizers to fertilize the land, and crops are sold and the waste remains unused. Yeah? So there is no use for the waste. Transportation is based on non-renewable energy, and number of vehicles has grown dramatically. Give me another suggestion for this.
More and more vehicles or kinds of transport appeared, and
Yeah, so more kinds of transport appeared that use non-renewable energy, or people transport goods with non-renewable energy. Everything is here. Yeah? So, quick population and urban growth. Again,
Cities
population
started
grows quickly, yeah, urban population grows quickly and the resources are used excessively. Excessively. What can we do with these two parts? First of all, we learn each category, speak with cause and effect, and paraphrase. Secondly, when we do the second part, we can already compare. How do we compare? Unlike before the 1800s, when the food was produced individually, after the Industrial Revolution, the humanity faced the mass production of food. So we can do it this way. Now, after we have worked vertically, we can start doing it horizontally, because it can be even what? The course or the idea for the project. Humanity before and after the Industrial Revolution. Where else, at what else topics can we use this part, this historical part? Urbanization. Yeah, so urban growth, urbanization, tourism, transportation, tourism, that will be the same. Then demographic situations here. Then healthy, unhealthy food. The food we use, like the food, how to say it? Okay, different kinds of food, like processed foods and natural eco foods. Why? Yeah.
And alternative kinds of energy.
Yeah, and the alternative kinds of energy, and again, the agriculture. We can discuss the sustainable cycles of living and of agriculture. So, we are still here. Then, all these things, they started harming the environment.
Because of?
Yeah, so, but again, we can start with this first. And we can do emission of greenhouse gases. Paraphrase.
Greenhouse gases
Are emitted. Are emitted. Yeah?
by people
Spraying
in
of
cities.
chemicals. Chemicals are sprayed. We can even do it very simple from the very beginning. Pesticides, like when I was preparing
Games.
how to, so I was thinking about the scheme, and I thought, wow, I didn't underline pesticides, but there has to be the verb,
Yeah.
yeah? To pest, when the insects occupy the field, and people, I didn't know the word, I just found out it yesterday, and people depest. And people depest. Yeah, that is why to pest. They come to depest. We get rid of them. Yeah,
We
so
can use a noun.
we
start
can use
with
the
a
noun, yeah, and a pest as a noun, but to pest is a verb.
Yeah.
They pest and we depest. To depest, to depest, we use pesticides.
Очень легко.
Sure. Like de meaning get rid of. So, fertilizers, again we know that earlier natural fertilizers were used. We fertilize, the land is fertilized, the soil is fertilized. Plastic packaging, we package, we pack. So oil spills, we spill the oil, oil is spilled, okay, burning fossil fuels, again fossil fuels are burned, so waste, again it includes municipal solid waste, so different kinds of waste, deforestation, overfishing and overhunting. So, again, To forest means to plant a forest. To deforest means to cut it down. Yeah? So deforestation is the process of it. What is the process of deforestation? It is when the land is deforested. And after that we have to forest it. Yeah, so what are we doing? We are foresting the land, and the process is called foresting or forestation.
Forestry and
Foresting is as a gerund or forestation as a noun.
Sorry, there is a word afforestation?
No, no, no.
no, no,
No, no, no, no, no, no, no. Forestation, just like forest.
I've heard reforestation.
Опустошення земель чи що?
Sure, конечно,
Залезть.
конечно, вырубка. Да. So, and so then, when I was teaching this topic, I noticed that even here there are two big groups. One group is this, and another group is this.
Industry and agriculture.
No, no. Come on. Look at them, and because I was struck by the idea that we harm the environment in two big ways.
Many ways.
Come on, two big ways. No, there are two big ways.
Two big ways.
Start with this: deforestation, overfishing, and overhunting.
It's flora and fauna.
We harvest the land too much, meaning we take from the land too much.
And we
Yeah.
give
And we give or spill or again. Yeah? So, and that is what we give. That is what we take, and that is what we give. And that is how there are two big groups here. We take.
Giving is much more than
Yeah.
taking.
So we give very harmful things, yeah? Chemicals, pesticides, fertilizers, plastics, and so on. And we take wood, fish, and animals. Okay, so how can we do? Now, can you build me the phrase using this way?
Horizontal.
Now let's work this way. Come on.
In comparison to the situation
Good.
before,
In comparison to the situation before the Industrial Revolution, when food was produced individually,
mass
with
production
the
of goods
mass production of goods, humans
resulted
or
in harming environment.
production of goods resulted in harming the environment. Yeah? Mass production resulted in emission of greenhouse gases and
use of
spraying
chemicals.
of chemicals. Again, you understand that these categories, they can go with many other things. Yeah? But this is how I thought it would be easier for the kids and for the students to get there. So when we produce things massively, we emit greenhouse gases and spray chemicals.
And there is waste. So we can add waste.
Yeah, so waste is here, but I put it into near the population because again it is also connected with the population growth. But you understand that waste may be here as well. So then, as food is produced massively, we need to depest the lands. Why do we depest the lands?
Because it can't be done naturally.
Because they are pested, or the land is pested. Why is it pested? Because there is no crop rotation. Why there were no pests before? Because the crops were rotated. 1 year there was wheat here, next year the wheat was 10 kilometers from here. And the pests didn't pest the land. So they didn't have to depest the land. Now, because we use monocropping, the same crops all the time, the pests pest the land, and we have to depest it with pesticides.
And we have to change pesticides rather often because pests get used
To
them
the
and become-
pesticides,
Yeah.
Pests don't like to be depested and get used to the pesticides.
They become immune.
Immune, yeah. So, which is another good topic for discussion. Okay, so, and also because of the monocropping and because there is no sustainable farming cycle, we need to fertilize the land with chemical fertilizers. And chemical fertilization is very dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because again, a lot of waste is spread onto the land. Good. So crops now are usually sold. So for this we need plastic packaging because they are transported, stored and sold at distant places. So plastic packaging is another kind of waste. As we use different kinds of transport, we spill oils. What kind of oils? Usually petrol, yeah, very often. Oil, yeah, so all kinds of oils. And also we burn fossil fuels which contain nitrogen and so on. Okay. Quick population growth also results in different kinds of waste, and the excessive use of resources includes deforestation, overfishing, and overhunting. So, here we can go this way or just this way, or you can talk about one way and ask them to find as many points as you need. For example, quick population growth will result in emission of greenhouse gases and spraying of chemicals and everything else. Okay, questions here? No questions. So, what is the effect of this? And again, usually there are so many words. I mean, I was somehow, bewildered with the number of words that exist. So, and I decided that probably they are just the steps of the same process. For example, maybe I am wrong, but so what happens because of this? Ozone layer depletion, or ozone layer is depleted. Yeah? Meaning the ozone layer becomes thinner. So, and here the arrows mean so, or which result in, the result of which is, so the annual temperature rises. As a result, there is global warming and climate change. So permafrost is thawing. Yeah? That is why, or because of the global warming, there are warmer oceans, rising sea level, and damaged corals, and that is why the heat waves, droughts, and wildfires increase. So here we finally come to the topic which can be taught very early, natural disasters. But here it will appear only as a part of cause and effect.
There's also climate change.
Yeah. So and and we can talk about climate change as a topic, because climate change is a result of human activity. We changed from or after the Industrial Revolution. Okay. Yeah. So acidification happens because of acid rains. It happens because of water.
water cycle.
Oh, perfect. Because of the water cycle and because, again, of pesticides and spraying of chemicals and greenhouse gases. So then, they all contaminate the land, and the land is contaminated, yeah, with what? With plastic waste, dust and plastic waste, pesticides. That is why the natural disasters rise, the natural habitats are lost, and the dispersation is critical, meaning the population is no longer able to sustain itself. What can you tell me about this? The use of natural resources is not
Endangered animals become extinct.
sustainable. Good. Is not sustainable. Yeah? And we can talk about the natural resources. And finally go the solutions. The solutions are loss reducing emissions, then eco-friendly products, carbon reduction of carbon footprint, then reuse, reduce and recycle. You all know the recycling science. Use of renewable energy. And again, we can talk about renewable energy here. What kind of renewable energy was used before? Then, lures protecting species, sustainable use of natural resources, which are forestry, means foresting the mountains. Fishery means fishing the ponds. Yeah? And hunting and gathering sustainably. And also captive breeding. Captive breeding is, what is captive breeding?
Zoos.
Breed. So, when animals are bred in captivity. In captivity. Clear? Clear, yeah? So, okay, now I would ask any of you to produce a sustainable phrase to me, a good phrase. So, where can we go now? Imagine we have already done all this. What can we do now? What is possible to do now?
To summarize.
How? Come on.
It is not the time for them to write an essay yet.
No.
They need to work with it.
Yeah, so we are still memorizing the map. Yeah? We are still at the point of memorization the map. What can we do for the memorization?
They can make dialogues, for example, with each other. Repeat again.
Very good. Now we can go back to the questions of IELTS and try to ask them to answer those questions. For example, are there any environmental problems in your country? Yeah? Now let's answer them from a new point of view. I think that there are numerous environmental problems in my country connected with, and choose what you like. Mass production of goods, about China and Ukraine. Yeah? So then, unsustainable farming or monocropping, again for Ukraine, it's a good problem. Then, transportation for so many countries that are near the oceans, transportations and spills, and quick population growth that results in problems for, again, so many countries. So choose any other question and try to answer it. I like this. What do you think is the main danger the world faces in terms of environment? It is part 3 style questions.
At the beginning, it's a difficult.
It's a difficult question. And I think there are
Yeah,
many
there are a lot of-
dangers.
Yes, many dangers, yeah.
Yeah, and you can start with enumerating the dangers. What are the dangers? The loss of natural habitats, the spill, and you just play with the vocabulary. However, some dangers are more dangerous. No, don't use this. Yeah, some dangers are more
Terrible.
harmful,
No, harmful,
if you like the word terrible, but are more harmful than the others. For example, for my country, which practices monocropping, the dangers will be so,
Soil
so, and
contamination,
so.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and I remember with tears the words when we had sustainable closed farming cycle. Okay, yeah, so, like step number 1, you can go back to the IELTS questions. Step number 2, like my favorite activity, is to start with any word from here. Just you tell anything, and they should develop the whole idea. For example, I tell carbon footprint reduction or carbon footprint. Huh? So, tell me about the carbon footprint. Carbon footprint, and here, but usually you speak longer about the carbon footprint. I just assume that you know what it is. It's how much we use, how much energy and everything we use and waste. Yeah? And usually we speak about the reduction of carbon footprint, meaning not to tap the water when you're brushing your teeth. So many things. To take public transport, and there are many activities connected with the reduction. And usually this is the topic which we discussed before. Not here, it's an easy topic. This is the topic when it can be discussed when talking about your daily routines even. Yeah? So, okay, carbon footprint. What will you tell me about? Carbon footprint is the number of natural resources that we use. We use so many natural resources because why do we use so
Because
many
we-
natural resources?
we have
We
cars, we
live in
produce.
industrialized societies which use transportation, packaged food, yeah? So, chemical fertilizers and uses natural resources excessively. So, to reduce my carbon footprint, I have to, and here are the actions. To sort the waste, to recycle, to use public transport, to buy eco-friendly foods, and not to, for example, I don't know what to do, not to waste water. Yeah? So, and okay, yeah. Or renewable energy. Huh? So, and you can go talking about renewable energy. Why do we need renewable energy? Because we have already excessively used the resources, and we use the transportation that is based on non-renewable energy. So renewable energy will help us to do what? To use natural resources sustainably. So, and you can go on practicing it, but also you understand that it doesn't go just by itself. This is the map that is a part of a long process. You memorize the things. You, first of all, you have the whole impression. Then you start memorizing. Then you start authorizing, playing with it. And finally, there will be a stage when your students can use this vocabulary more systematically. I mean by using chronology, by using cause and effect, by using categorization. Yeah? So they can describe any kinds of categories, and also by talking about the solutions. Find a solution to a problem is usually a quite difficult task to perform. Questions here? You have no questions. Comments here? You have no comments.
Maybe later as well. It's very good, really.
It's
But
useful.
I'd like it to be more personal. I mean, we need an additional column, my contribution. And the questions, if I were in charge, if I had a farm, I would advise, I would practice, I would do something.
It's up to you. I mean, this is a good format, and this is what you can keep in your portfolio. If you have the column here, it's a good thing to do. You can just glue your column and make it more personal.
And this is often in those questions, because they ask what can you do?
Sure,
Or
and
who
you
should
start
take
earlier.
responsibility, yeah.
You start earlier. I mean, it's not that you start talking about it only here. This is the topic of being eco-friendly. It comes from earlier stages. It doesn't start only here. We talk about it from the very beginning, using shampoos, just a healthy lifestyle, different kinds of foods. So it's not that this is the first time they see it. Usually every topic should include something connected with the modern style of living, how you understand your role in the modern society. Okay, yeah? So more comments? No? Yeah? Okay, then turn the page. And next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Turn the page.
Okay, so this is, you don't have the scheme. This is the scheme I love so much. It is about the four spheres. And it is, yeah, Elena Gennadievna knows my favorite scheme. Yeah, and it tells about the four spheres, which are the atmosphere, yeah, then the biosphere, then the lithosphere, and the hydrosphere. Yeah? And here you can, again, we talk about it much before. Like we talk about the biomes and the groups of animals and the types of land and the water cycle. And we do not talk about atmosphere because this is quite here. But again, about the food chains. These are the good topics to talk about. Kids love talking about these topics. But we can use the scheme when we talk about the pollution. Because it shows us why the land is polluted. Everything happens through the water cycle. So, for example, the chemicals are spilled into the land and onto the water. So with the water cycle, they go up and they contaminate the biosphere and the lithosphere and, of course, the atmosphere, which layers become thinner and thinner and thinner. And we can even differentiate where the ozone layer is. Imagine it is quite thin already. Yeah, so and it's becoming thinner and holy with holes. Okay, so, but this is just the related topic. Next slide, please. And the topic, okay, so we'll go to it later. So I don't think you will be able to do it today. So next slide. Too much of a good thing. So next slide. Next slide. Okay, so, and this is how we can extend the topic. This is relatively the same topic, only we teach it a bit later. And again, it will review the same historical phases before and after the Industrial Revolution. But now, as we're talking about urbanization and how our world is being urbanized, we will be talking about population density, industry, transport, food, environmental conditions, opportunities and temptations, and mentality. What are the topics from the previous topic?
Before and
Before and after, then
Transport.
very good, transport,
population,
then population, industry, food, and even environmental conditions.
Yes.
Yeah? So they had been studied before. What do we add to the category connecting with it with urbanization?
Mentality.
This is my favorite. And by the way, I took it from a special manual for rural priests. I loved it. I loved it. So, and that is what they for rural priests, for people who do their service in rural parts of
Which country?
I shouldn't have said this.
Specify.
Yeah, so, but I like this mentality. And again, so mentality, this is another topic. It's not the topic we focus on. Yeah? Because usually when we talk about urbanization, we talk about these problems, then the effect, the result, and again the solution. And again the solution.
And we can also talk about advantages and disadvantages.
Sure. And then we are talking about advantages and disadvantages of living in a city and in a country. And then we are talking about how to live in a very urbanized environment. And then we can talk about the psychological problems people face today because they have increased opportunities, but also they have more temptations at the same time. And here, as you see, there are more kinds of pollution. They are mostly connected with the city life. And they are usually defined when we talk about city life. They are noise pollution, visual pollution, and light pollution. Especially light pollution is a great topic today. You understand that for many species living in an always lit space, which a city is, means the destruction of natural cycles, and for people as well. So we can use this in urbanization, and I'll go back.
Living in a city and living in a country.
So, and you see that this is not a separate topic. I mean, harming the environment is quite a dull topic, but it can't be separated from so other important issues. Which other issue will it be connected with? Tourism. Yeah, when we talk about tourism, again, this year I was developing a topic on tourism, and I was thinking about the categories and consulting my teachers, and they said, like in one voice, no harming the environment. Kids are full with harming the environment. So when talking about tourism, we already talked about the new types of tourists who just do not pay for package tours, but they volunteer, they do self-touring, and so on and so forth. So we changed the angle because otherwise, the easily prophesied decision will be just to go to the harming the environment, and then again overpopulation, overcrowding, visual pollution, and
You
so
can
on.
talk about harm and benefits to the local community.
Again, the local communities, how to live sustainably and harm and benefits. Again, advertisements, and how our environment is polluted with visual things. So then, radio, music, and mass media, noise pollution. How we are polluted with all this. So advertisements, then different kinds of attractions, living in a city, and light pollution, and so on and so forth. And it brings us into different topics. We can go into different topics. And there is nothing bad when the topics are interconnected. It's good for the kids to understand that there is something behind so many issues. And here, something is history.
And it's great for exams, because when they start
Sure.
talking about one thing, they can last.
Yeah, they can
last
easily,
and
they
last.
can easily go and go, because when you teach them, you don't teach them in clusters, but you teach them in the cause and effect. Yeah, the categories that go from one to each other, and they make this cause and effect chain.
And as for language awareness, it makes their speech like more complex.
Sure.
I mean, they have complex sentences.
Yeah, and
They
if you
go blah,
always
blah, blah,
and
blah,
if
yeah.
you always use language awareness, again, congested transport. Transport congests the roads. The roads are congested. Congestion, traffic congestions are great problems of today. Distraction, distracted, to distract. We even can, like sometimes, if you feel that it's too difficult for the group, you can practice word families from the very beginning. Like you can give them the word families and ask them, to find the nouns and the verbs and the adjectives
We'll look
for
them up
this.
in a dictionary, which gives families,
Yeah,
word families, which
yeah.
also good.
And very often kids start feeling the family. It's they develop the feeling for the family even before this. Distracted, and sometimes kids can ask, and is it related to attract? And I say sure, and it's related to tract, because the track and you track, you distract. So you track, you follow something, you distract, you do not follow. Attract, you come to the track. And this is how they start remembering more and more words, because they become aware of the language and they're not afraid of it. And they are not looking up for a word in a dictionary if they can't think of its root, because they keep analyzing it. Because we have to develop the so-called language detective. If you can detect the word, if you can understand where the word is from.
Yeah, when we talk about transformations or favoring, I often tell them, like, look at the sentence and think, you are a detective, what do they want from you? Like, what do you need to do?
Yeah.
If they understand, it's easy.
Yeah, so, and this gives a better understanding of the sentence and of the whole language in general. Okay, I think we can stop here and have some, so my idea was go up, like the previous slides.
How do we do that?
Just,
I'm
no,
sorry.
we don't know how to do
I
it.
don't know
Maybe,
how to do
maybe,
it.
So
Probably. Yeah,
I
okay.
thought that I also thought that we could review Bloom's taxonomy, and go next slide, and can ask students. So I wanted you to
it's a bit
develop the
thinking.
questions to this maps. Like using Bloom's taxonomy, you can easily give them a number of tasks that you understand will develop their thinking level. At the very first, stage. Give me the task for this. Using harming the environment.
Like, list the problems.
I like this.
Environmental problems.
List the environmental problems. Give me all the reasons
state.
for having the environment.
State.
Yeah, reproduce, state, repeat. And we could also add here paraphrase. Yeah, and paraphrase. Then classify. You use all this. Yeah, you use all this. Classify and give me all the effects of, not the list, but you classify according to something. Then demonstrate, employ, illustrate, and so on. How do you do it? You already used the whole scheme. Demonstrate how, not dramatize of course, but demonstrate how the monocropping changed our attitude to environment. And they already use the higher skill. Then analyze, my favorite. Compare, contrast, Criticize, discriminate, which is more harmful, which is less harmful. Yeah? Examine again. So evaluate, and this is very difficult already, but justify, value, judge, select, and it should be based on your opinion already. Here where we have your own country, your own family, and this is more personal. And the final level, the opposite level of thinking is, of course, construct the law for example, recycling plastic waste in your hometown. Or formulate the laws or formulate the ways how something can be changed. So, and by using the questions from Bloom's taxonomy, you can see how you will develop their thinking using the same vocabulary. It's not that you will have them to memorize it and to read it to you. It's of course a great idea, but it won't last long. Okay, that's all. And your questions now.
No, I'm a
Чому
little
буде вас на
bit,
флешку взяти?
Все на компьютере уже есть, да.
I'm a little bit confused.
Come on.
Is it for English as a foreign language?
Sure.
Because for me it's like for scientifically minded students.
Oh,
I have
for
answer.
in my language school, the kids of the 8th grade do it like this.
Okay, I have
Like 14, yeah. So and Dina saw it, and 14 years old, and they can easily do it.
And I have an idea. If they attempt an exam, it can be anything, TOEFL, IELTS. The topics are so diverse that they won't manage. If they don't know the vocabulary, they will drown immediately.
Yeah, they
So
should
it
see.
helps.
They should
It
see
enriches
this
the vocabulary.
Yeah, how the vocabulary is interconnected. Like how they just can't learn all these words on the topic and be successful. It won't get into your brain. I see no way how it can get into the brain of a student. Maybe if you are a very successful memorizer, you can memorize all this vocabulary easily. But usually they do not do it.
And just looking at the map helps.
Yeah, so looking helps to memorize,
Yeah.
to authorize, and to use it for revision. The maps, it's not that I say that they will remember it forever. Of course, maybe they will remember it well when they study it, but then next year they will review it, and then for the 3rd year they will operate with everything so
Yeah, it
well.
takes time.
Because the communities talk about it all the time. And these topics are more related to their lifestyle than we could imagine, because it's everywhere. And at schools they talk about it, and when they start learning the topic, they're already ready.
I have two questions.
Come on,
If it's possible.
come on.
From what grade can we start teaching like that?
We start teaching from the 1st grade.
We don't.
5 years.
Yeah,
We don't have
five
the
years.
First,
Yeah,
first
yeah.
map.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the second question is, what about parents? Can parents help
They-
teachers because they don't know that system?
The kids, it doesn't start like this. It's not the math that we give to the 5-year-olds. Yeah. And by the way, by the time the kids get the maps like this, they already know everything. Like they can categorize, they see the categories, they see the words. Parents shouldn't help. There is no need to help. More questions? No questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, bye-bye. So next time we'll talk about, so there are 2 options, and I would suggest either talking about art or talking about inventions. But I would prefer inventions.
Yeah, technology.
Because technology is very